There is a quiet 12-year-old boy who rarely makes the headlines. His parents work hard to keep him out of the spotlight, to give him as ordinary a childhood as a life like his could ever allow. You'll catch the occasional glimpse of him at a big family occasion, at a football match beside his dad, on a Christmas card. But mostly, he's kept gently out of view, growing up in the English countryside like any other schoolboy. And yet, this unassuming young boy quietly holds a position that places him far, far above his own cousins, the children of Prince Harry, in the one ranking that has defined this family for more than 1,000 years. His name is Prince George, and the story of how he came to sit so high above his little Sussex cousins, Archie and Lilibet, tells you something genuinely fascinating about how the monarchy really works, and about the very different futures awaiting the children of this divided family. So let me explain it to you, gently and clearly, because it's a more interesting story than you might think. Let me start by saying something important, right at the top. Every single child I'm going to talk about today, George, Charlotte, Louis, Archie, and Lilibet, is exactly that, a child. None of them chose where they were born in this family. None of them asked for a number beside their name. So while we're going to talk about rankings and succession and who sits above whom, please remember the whole way through that this is not about one child being better or more important than another. It's simply about the strange, ancient rules of royal inheritance and the accident of birth order that shapes these young lives before they're old enough to understand any of it. With that firmly in mind, let's begin. Prince George of Wales was born on the 22nd of July 2013, the first child of Prince William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales. From the very moment he drew his first breath, his future was, in a sense, already written, because George is what the royals call the heir's heir. His father, William, is first in line to the throne, the direct successor to King Charles, and George, as William's eldest child, is second in line. One day, all being well, this quiet boy will be King George, the seventh of that name. He is being raised, carefully and lovingly, with that immense destiny in mind, but also with a determined effort to let him simply be a child for as long as possible. His parents want him to understand who he is, gradually and gently, without it frightening him or stealing his childhood away. Royal biographers who follow the family closely say a great deal of careful thought has gone into this, far more than in previous generations. The aim, as one put it, is to make sure George's future doesn't feel scary, that it becomes something he simply understands as a natural part of his life, introduced so slowly and so kindly that he grows into it without ever feeling its full weight all at once. It's believed George was told, in an age-appropriate way, about his eventual destiny when he was around 7 years old, the same gentle way Queen Elizabeth herself came to understand her future. As he grows, that preparation will deepen. Like his father and grandfather before him, George is widely expected to one day undertake military training, a long-standing tradition for those destined to be head of the armed forces. But for now, the priority is simply a happy, grounded boyhood. William, who knows better than anyone what it's like to grow up as a future king, is determined that his son's path will be smoother and warmer than the one he himself walked. Now, to understand how George outranks his Sussex cousins, you need to understand how the line of succession actually works, and it's simpler than most people think. The crown passes down the direct line first, so it goes from the monarch to their eldest child to that child's eldest child, and so on, before it ever branches sideways to brothers, sisters, or cousins. King Charles is the sovereign. His heir is his eldest son, William. After William come William's own 3 children in order of their birth. So the top of the list reads like this. First, Prince William. Second, Prince George. Third, Princess Charlotte. And fourth, the youngest Wales child, Prince Louis. Only after all of William's children have had their place does the line move on to Charles's second son, Prince Harry, who sits fifth. And immediately after Harry come his 2 children. Prince Archie is 6th in line and Princess Lilibet is 7th. So there it is, laid out plainly. Prince George sits 2nd. His cousin Archie sits 6th. That's a gap of 4 full places between 2 little boys who are, in the family tree, first cousins, the sons of 2 brothers. George quietly outranks both Archie and Lilibet, not by anything he has done, but simply because his father is the heir and Harry is the younger son. In the cold arithmetic of monarchy, the elder brother's line always comes first. William's children leap ahead of Harry's children, automatically, from birth. And so a 12-year-old in England outranks his 7-year-old and 5-year-old cousins across the Atlantic, and one day the gap between their destinies will be greater still. There's a lovely modern wrinkle in all of this that's worth knowing, because it shows the monarchy quietly moving with the times. For most of history, a rule called male preference primogeniture meant that boys jumped ahead of their older sisters in the line. A younger brother would simply leapfrog an elder sister, purely because he was male. But in 2013, a new law called the Succession to the Crown Act swept that away for anyone born after October 2011, making the line gender equal at last. And Princess Charlotte was the very first royal in history to benefit from it. When her little brother Louis was born in 2018, the old rules would have pushed Charlotte down a place to let him jump ahead of her. Instead, for the first time ever, a princess kept her higher position over a younger brother. Charlotte remained third, and Louis took his place behind her at fourth. It was a small, quiet piece of history, a sign that even this most ancient of institutions can change. So when you look at the Wales children today, George, then Charlotte, then Louis, you're looking at the first generation of British royals to be ranked by birth order alone, regardless of whether they're a boy or a girl. But here's where the story becomes really interesting, and where it reveals the very different lives these children are being raised to live. Because it isn't just a number on a list. George and his Sussex cousins are growing up in almost completely different worlds. George is being raised in England, within the heart of the institution, quietly and steadily prepared for the role that awaits him. He attends school near the family home. He's beginning to appear at carefully chosen public events. And bit by bit, he's being shown the world he will one day lead. His whole upbringing is a gentle, decades-long preparation for the crown. Archie and Lilibet, by contrast, are growing up thousands of miles away, in California. After Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties and moved to America, they made a clear and deliberate choice to raise their children far from the pressures and the cameras of royal life. Archie and Lilibet are being brought up as, essentially, private American children. They play in the California sunshine, away from the formality and the scrutiny that George knows. And that, too, was a choice made out of love. A decision by their parents to give them a freer, more private childhood than the one Harry himself found so difficult. So when you look at these cousins, you're not really looking at a winner and a loser. You're looking at 2 sets of parents who made 2 very different decisions about what kind of life would be best for their children. One path leads toward a throne. The other leads toward privacy and freedom. Neither is wrong. They're just worlds apart. You can see those 2 worlds in the small glimpses the public gets of these children. George we have watched grow up at the nation's biggest moments. We saw him, a solemn little boy, walking in the procession at his great-grandmother Queen Elizabeth's funeral. We've seen him cheering at Wimbledon and at the football beside his father, learning what it means to represent his country one day. We've watched him on the Buckingham Palace balcony at Trooping the Colour, year after year, growing taller in each photograph. His childhood, however protected, unfolds partly in public, because the public will one day be his to serve. Archie and Lilibet, on the other hand, are barely seen at all. We catch only the rarest, most fleeting glimpses, a brief appearance in their parents' Netflix series, a photograph on a Christmas card, a mention in an interview. Their parents guard their privacy fiercely, and as a result, most people wouldn't even recognize them. 2 cousins, both descended from the same throne, one growing up in the full glow of a nation's attention, the other in the quiet of a California home. It's a vivid picture of just how completely this one family has split into 2. And there's a real human poignancy underneath it all, because these cousins, who share a bloodline and a great-grandmother, hardly know one another. The rift between their fathers, William and Harry, has meant that George, Charlotte, and Louis have grown up with very little contact with Archie and Lilibet. They are first cousins who, through no fault of their own, are growing up almost as strangers, separated by an ocean, and by a family quarrel they had no part in making. Whatever the rights and wrongs of the adults' falling out, it's the children who quietly lose something in it, the simple chance to know their own cousins. Now, I want to clear up something that confuses a great many people, because it's an important part of this story. You might assume that because George outranks them, Archie and Lilibet must not be a prince and princess at all. But that isn't true. In fact, since their grandfather became King Charles, Archie and Lilibet are fully entitled to be styled as Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, and the palace updated their titles to reflect exactly that. It's a birthright that comes from being the grandchildren of the monarch, regardless of where they live. So this was never about one child having a grand title and the others not. All of these children, the Wales children and the Sussex children alike, are princes and princesses. The difference between them isn't the title, it's the line. It's the order of succession. And in that order, the heir's children will always come before the spare's children. That's the heart of it. And now we come to the part of this story that genuinely surprises almost everyone who hears it, the detail that turns the whole thing on its head. Because while George clearly outranks Archie and Lilibet, you might assume that Harry's children, raised privately in America and unlikely ever to be working royals, must sit quite low down the list. The opposite is true. Archie and Lilibet, at 6th and 7th, actually rank above some of the most hardworking and senior members of the entire royal family. Let that sink in for a moment. Those two little ones in California sit ahead of their cousin James, the Earl of Wessex, who is 16th. They sit ahead of Lady Louise, who is 17th. And most strikingly of all, they sit ahead of Princess Anne herself, the king's own sister, the famously tireless Princess Royal who carries out hundreds of engagements a year, who is 18th in line. Think about how surprising that is. Princess Anne has devoted her entire life to the service of the crown. She is one of the hardest working royals in living memory. And yet, in the strict line of succession, she sits below a 5-year-old girl who is being raised in California and may never carry out a single royal duty in her life. The same is true for young James and Louise, the children of Prince Edward, who are grandchildren of the late Queen, and who are far closer to royal life than their Sussex cousins, yet who rank a full 10 places below them. How can that be? The answer reveals the one rule that governs everything. Succession follows blood and birth order down the direct line, and nothing else. It doesn't care how hard you work. It doesn't care whether you live in a palace or fly thousands of miles away. It doesn't care whether you ever put on a royal uniform. It cares only about how closely you descend from the most recent monarchs, and in what order you were born. Harry is the king's son, so Harry's children leap ahead of the king's siblings and their children, no matter how devoted those others may be. It is, when you think about it, a beautifully simple and almost ruthlessly fair system. And it's also why so many people get it completely wrong. It's worth adding that the line, for all its ancient rigidity, is not entirely frozen. It can be changed, but only by law and only with the agreement of the other Commonwealth countries that share the king as their head of state. We're actually seeing this play out right now. Following the very public downfall of Andrew, the king's brother, who sits 8th in line, the British government has been openly discussing legislation that could remove him from the line of succession altogether, with countries like Australia, Canada, and New Zealand signaling they would support such a move. It's a reminder that a place in the succession, while it normally passes automatically by birth, is ultimately something Parliament can adjust when circumstances demand it. But these changes are rare, and they require enormous coordination. For the children we're talking about, George, Archie, and the rest, their places were set the moment they were born, and barring something extraordinary, that is where they will stay. There's one more small but fascinating rule that touches these very children. Under the same modern agreement, only the first 6 people in the line of succession need the monarch's formal permission before they can marry. If any of those 6 were to wed without the sovereign's consent, they and their children would lose their place in the line entirely. It's a rule designed to protect the stability of the succession at the very top. And here's the curious thing. It means that George, Charlotte, Louis, Harry, and even little Archie at 6th will one day need the king's blessing to marry, while Lilibet, sitting just one place lower at 7th, will not. A single place in the line, and a rule that will quietly shape these children's adult lives in ways they can't yet imagine. It's another reminder of how much weight rests on the simple order in which they happen to be born. So when we ask, who is the young royal who quietly outranks Harry's own children, the honest answer is Prince George, the future king, sitting serenely at number 2 while his cousins sit at 6 and 7. But the deeper truth is even more fascinating. The whole line is a kind of living map of how the monarchy sees itself, a map drawn not by merit or by closeness or by love, but purely by birth. And that map has placed these particular cousins on wildly different paths before any of them could walk. I do think it's worth pausing here to say something kind and honest, because it would be easy to turn all of this into a story about rivalry, and it really isn't one. The number beside a child's name tells you absolutely nothing about the person they will grow up to be. It doesn't tell you whether they'll be kind, or clever, or hardworking, or happy. George being second in line doesn't make him a better child than Archie being 6th. It just means he was born into a heavier destiny. In fact, you could argue that in some ways, Archie and Lilibet have been given a gift their cousin George can only dream of, the gift of a private, ordinary childhood, free from the crushing weight of a crown that will one day rest on George's head. There's a poignancy in that. The boy at number 2 carries a burden the children at 6 and 7 will never have to bear. And the children at 6 and 7 have a freedom the boy at number 2 will never know. Each of them got something. Each of them gave something up, and none of them had any say in it at all. It's also a reminder of how this family, for all its grandeur, is in the end just a family, with brothers who grew apart, with cousins who barely know one another, with children growing up on opposite sides of the world who share the same great-grandmother in Queen Elizabeth. One day, perhaps, George and Archie will meet as grown men, one a king and the other a private citizen, and look back on the strange accident of birth that sent them down such different roads. Whether they'll be close, whether the rift between their fathers will have healed by then, no one can say. But the line of succession will go on quietly doing what it has always done, placing each new royal child in their appointed spot, indifferent to all the human drama swirling around them. So the next time you see that quiet, slightly shy boy at a royal event standing a little awkwardly beside his parents, remember what he carries. Prince George is not the loudest royal, nor the most famous, nor the one the tabloids chase. He is simply, quietly, the future king, sitting far above cousins he rarely sees, destined for a role none of them will ever hold. He outranks Archie and Lilibet not through ambition or effort, but through the simple, ancient accident of being born the heir's eldest son. And while his Sussex cousins run free in the California sun, George grows up in the shadow of a crown, being gently, lovingly prepared for the day, hopefully many decades from now, when the whole weight of this 1,000-year-old institution will finally come to rest on his shoulders. That is the quiet truth at the heart of this divided family. 2 brothers, 2 branches, and a handful of young cousins whose entire futures were decided not by anything they did, but by the order in which they arrived in the world. George will be king. Archie and Lilibet, in all likelihood, will live private lives an ocean away, princes and princess in name, but free in a way George never will be. And somewhere in that strange arrangement, if you look at it kindly, every one of those children may just end up with the life that was always meant for them. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this look at the line of succession and these young royal cousins interesting, please do let me know in the comments. Do you think Prince George's quiet upbringing is the right way to prepare a future king? And were you surprised to learn just how the family's children are ranked? Until next time, take care.